everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. I'm Damien Forsyth. I help kind of run the Nassau Institute day to day. And just a couple housekeeping things. Obviously, there's coffee and tea in the back. The bathroom is across the hall in our office if you go all the way to the end.
But it won't be so long.
The presentation won't be so long, but you can go anytime. So this is our speaker, Jorge Borlandelli. He's part of the board of directors and the secretary here at the Nassau Institute. He's originally from Uruguay, or Uruguay as George says, with his accent. And he's going to give a short presentation. I won't give a big bio, it's a very casual thing, but he studied in Uruguay. He started a think tank in Uruguay. And he's here in the Bahamas as a private banker. So, to George.
Thanks very much. Good evening. This is going to be a conversation, not a speech. And let's start with a question. What do you think of economists and economics as a science nowadays?
Not a good question to start with.
For everybody.
You want an answer?
Yes, yes, of course.
They're
It's
like
a conversation.
They're like the weather, it's always changing.
Well, I was speaking with a gentleman here, and he mentioned an article in The Economist a couple of weeks ago. In fact, I have used their cover story, and the cover of the magazine was this. So, normally economists are not liked at all, because they are the ones who deliver the bad news. But more recently, the feeling is that basically they don't know what they're saying. And we have to separate two subjects here, which is important. And in this case, the idea is that the prologue to this analysis of the causes of what happened last year is going to be probably bigger than the actual looking into the causes. Looking into the causes is quite easy if we write the theory and the different points of view of the economists. We have two separate problems. One has to do with the fact that in every profession we have several kind of specializations and types. We have the professional economist, which normally is employed by a university and does research in the university and teaches. Sorry, let's call it the academic economist. And there, that kind of economist is not the one that we normally see or hear from. We will see it perhaps occasionally in one program on TV as a consultant, and he will be delivering a 2-minute soundbite. Okay? So, certainly not enough to explain deep and complicated issues. We have the professional economist who probably works as the economist for some industry or union, or perhaps works for a company. We have the economist who is in fact economist-politician, because he is either an officer of the government, or an agency of the government, or an aspiring officer of these institutions. And so we have to take into account those biases when analyzing what they say. And I'd like to see whenever an economist makes an assertion or analyzes a certain measure, I like to see all those spaces there filled. This is based on a book by Henry Hazlitt. He's an economist, and he was also a newsman. He wrote in newspapers and also had a few books. He was a person who would not elaborate theory, but disseminate the theory in a language understood by everybody. And he would say that no economist is right if he doesn't analyze all those 9 spaces there when analyzing a measure or any idea. And let me explain a little. The interest group. Almost in every measure or decision we can find an interested group who probably is behind the move to introduce that piece of legislation or decision by an independent body or any other initiative. We have an antagonistic group which sometimes is clearly identifiable, sometimes is very dispersed. For example, if the people who produce cars in the United States try to obtain an increase in the tariffs for the imports of cars, imported cars, the antagonistic group would be all consumers. And they are very dispersed. Sometimes, let's say, when the union is requesting certain changes in the contract, the antagonistic group is the companies in that industry. And other groups may be affected in a more indirect way. So, a good economist will analyze the effects for the interest group, for the antagonistic group, and the other groups, and both in the short, medium, and long term. When we look at the totals, we can get an idea of the reason why certain good economic measures are not taken. Sometimes it is because the interested group, talking about a good measure, when the interest group is too small or not powerful enough, or when the short-term effects are negative and the long terms are good, much bigger, but they are in the long term. So there are very few cases in which good measures are passed against this situation in which we have to, let's say, have a cost as a society first to reap the benefits. Tell me how many times you have seen an economist in the last 10 months, 12 months, analyzing measures in this way. Why it is important to separate this opinions and biased talk from theory? Well, I think that as citizens, it is fundamental for us to be closer to the truth and have an unbiased position in order to make our decisions. It's probably from an economic point of view an inefficient thing to do because we cannot be informed of every subject. But still, I think that I feel much better when I vote with more evidence and certainly with having separated these different opinions from the real issues. Let's look at this. Knowledge in economics can be conceived as two circles that have an area in common. And there are problems when market participants think that economists know nothing, of course. And there is also a problem when economists think that market participants know nothing. When the economists think that they know everything that market participants know, the temptation is to try to plan too much. In fact, this area here is the one that suggests that any effort at planning is doomed. That's the area of dispersed decision making, which no bureaucrat at the top is able